Welcome at our third online meetup of Blockchain Lab Drenthe Foundation. My naam is Adrie Wisman. I'm a co-founder of Blockchain Lab, and we organize this meetup every third Thursday of the month. We do that because one of our goals is to inform people, small and medium enterprises, students, universities, citizens, governmental bodies, to give them a broader perspective on blockchain and distributed ledger technology. As always, we have a nice agenda with 3 different topics. The first one is going to be me speaking about what's going on in blockchain land, the good, the bad, the ugly, the newest scams, for instance. Next to that, the second speaker is going to be Jeroen Wester. He's going to tell you about all the ins and outs of Stellar. And the third topic we have is about consensus. And we'll look at some videos of Andreas Antonopoulos, where he talks about rules without rulers and why consensus is so important in the blockchain space. Now, without further ado, I will go and start my presentation. And as always, I start with looking at some cryptocurrency, and not just some cryptocurrency. In this case, it's Bitcoin. And we see here a chart of the last month of Bitcoin. And you can see that, well, it's been going down for 4.33%. The current price is around $9,100 US, and at 1 month ago it was 9,500, which is relatively low volatility for Bitcoin. We used to see movements of 10 to 20% in one day, let alone 4% in 1 month. So not much has been going on. Why we look at Bitcoin is, you can see that in the next chart. Where you see Bitcoin dominance as a percentage of market cap, the total market cap of all cryptocurrencies in the world. And there you can see that at the moment the total percentage of market cap is around 63%. Of all the money invested in cryptocurrencies in the world, 63% is in Bitcoin. A few years ago it even was a lot higher, 70, 80%, but you saw some movement in Ethereum, and the Bitcoin dominance went down to around 40%. But as all these altcoins went down in market value, Bitcoin went up, and so we're around 63%, which means there is a big movement in cryptocurrency where they discard a lot of small coins and everybody's looking at Bitcoin. So not much going on in that market at the moment. Where a lot is going on is this. Normally I have some topics and then speak about scams, but the scam of the last few days has been all over the world in the news. The scam where they hacked Twitter and tried to use around 130 verified accounts to get people to buy some Bitcoin and send that to Joe Biden, Elon Musk, etc. with the story that when you send them $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, they will return the money within half an hour and double it, right? So there was this happy story that Elon Musk wanted to do something for the world and give some money back, and use Bitcoin to do that? Well, of course, if it looks too nice to be true, then it probably is. And so this was. It was a scam to try to let people send money to these Bitcoin addresses. Or it was just one address. Mistake number one. So what happened? There was a social engineering attack on some people working at Twitter, some employees of Twitter, which have the privileges to change something in the account of all these celebrities, post tweets, change their telephone number, change their email address. And so they used these logins to change the password on these accounts. First they changed the email address, then they asked for a new password, changed the password, and then took over their Twitter account and posted these stories in the hope that people would send money. Well, it worked, but just a little bit. I mean, if you look at the number of followers these people have, Barack Obama, Elon Musk, Kim Kardashian, these people have millions and millions of followers. And only around 300 people sent some money, right? Altogether, because Bitcoin is not anonymous, right? Bitcoin is transparent and immutable. So if you put these addresses in a Bitcoin Explorer, then you can see how much money is deposited. And it is around 15 Bitcoin that people deposited in total around the world, over all these millions of followers. So they got around $130,000, $140,000. They probably expected a little bit more. And mistake number two is getting the money from these people is just the beginning. Where do you go and exit? Where do you retrieve the money? Because everybody will be looking with binoculars at these account numbers and what's going to happen. So it was a relatively small hack, but it was a first that they used social media accounts like Twitter to get at the money. My second topic in this block is China is stepping on the gas when it comes to blockchain applications. They created a list where you can see around 140 service applications they are going to use. And they're really investing a lot of time and effort to make that real. And they can because they have large numbers. When you look at China and their digital yuan, for instance, as one of the applications, they're testing that now. They were already testing that on the Chinese Uber and on a platform which is called Bilibili, which is a Chinese YouTube alternative, but where you can also pay for the content you look at, which has millions and millions of users. And now they are testing it also on the food delivery platform, which has 435 million users. Right? When China wants to introduce something in the market, then they have at least a billion users where they can test it on, which is an incredible amount. So they are really trying to establish a broad audience so they can test their blockchain applications. Last meetup, we talked about cryptocurrency adoption in charities. We looked at the website of the Red Cross. We looked at the website of War Child, where they already accept Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Just this week, there was a big American organization which is called give.org, which is a subsidiary of the Better Business Bureau, which is a very large organization. And they made their own platform where you can donate cryptocurrencies. And when you do a donation, you can decide yourself if you want the charity to have your name and address or not, right? So even in that world, in that kind of applications for donations, blockchain cryptocurrencies are really doing a lot of good and getting a real place in that market. Some good news also. We are developing our self-sovereign attendancy application, as you know it, and we made a little animation movie which we showed you last time. Well, that was picked up by the IOTA Foundation, and they featured us in their weekly video and talked about our application and who's going to use it, etc. I want to show you that for a moment.
Then a rather interesting project, especially for the people working in the realm of decentralized identities, is being developed in the Netherlands. If you've ever attended a course at university or a seminar where attendance was checked in order to get a certificate later on, you know that you always have to at least provide your name and signature, sometimes even more, to prove that you were there. Since I was allowed to use the video for this roundup, have a look at how a convenient solution for this problem could look like.
How our blockchain solution works. Decentralized, transparent, immutable, and cryptographically safe sharing of data on a need-to-know basis. Step 1. Event organizer, Isaac, registers an event on the blockchain and creates a unique event key. Step 2. A. The phone of the attendee, Harry, picks up the Bluetooth key at the event or the QR code for an online event. B. Generates a unique key. C. Uses it to access the blockchain. D. Register and store a certificate locally on Harry's phone. Step 3. The organizer closes the event to prevent misuse. Step 4. With the event wallet on his phone, Harry is able to verify 24/7 that he was present at a certain event, date, time, location, without revealing his identity details. Step 5. The verifier, Victor, can test the validity of event attendancy on the blockchain without having access to attendee Harry's identity details. A blockchain solution with maximum transparency while retaining maximum privacy.
That would be really cool because it makes the whole process easy for all the people involved. All you need is a simple QR code or similar, and you can get your certificate without further ado, and also misuse is prevented. The whole solution will be an open source project based on IOTA, and it is developed by the blockchain lab Drenthe. Their founder, Adri Wischmann, was kind enough to tell me that they are building this solution for their involvement in the European Interreg Bling project. The province of Drenthe is an official partner, and their blockchain lab will support the blockchain ecosystem in the northern Netherlands, bringing together commercial and non-commercial networks and organizing regular meetups. Their findings and also the video has been shared on their website already to let these municipalities and governments know of this solution. Good to know that these guys are fond of IOTA. Best of luck to you guys, and in case anybody wants to contribute, feel free to contact either Adri via Discord or via their website.
Well, we're very proud of that, that we're featured in their video. Next to me, you can see the other good news we have is we've been working for a few months now to get NL Stende University to set up a minor blockchain. And come next November, there will be a minor where students can learn the basics of blockchain, work on some real-world examples, and we made a little animation movie to inform the students and try to encourage them to enroll.
The internet today is about sharing data and information. The next version will be about sharing value and trust. Blockchain technology will enable this and be an important part of the internet. People will vote from home, prove the authenticity of their diplomas, trace the origins of food in a digital value chain from farmer to plate. The main trick of blockchain applications is to cut out the middleman. In this minor, you will learn about the ins and outs and the potential of blockchain technology. All people with knowledge of blockchain are in high demand. Do you want to be a part of the next version of the internet? Do you want to prepare our society for the future economy, use blockchain for good, or do you want a successful career in IT? Apply for this minor now and secure your spot.
So we're going to see how many students are going to apply for this minor, but we're very positive, of course, very optimistic about what's going on. We're making small steps to get the university to be able to provide this to their students. And of course, Jeroen, Danny, and I, as Blockchain Lab Drenthe, will be engaged in with these students and providing them with programming work and making connections with enterprises to have meaningful assignments for these students. Any questions about my part of the presentation? No questions? Then we will go to the next part, which is Jeroen Wester, who will talk to you about Stellar.
Hello, this is Jeroen Wester. I'm going to talk about Stellar. What is it? Very good subtitle. I'm one of the members of the Blockchain Lab Drenthe, usually in for a presentation, but I share this obligation with Adrie and Danny. And today I'm going to talk about Stellar. Stellar is a very interesting blockchain framework. It's aimed at facilitating cross-border payments. Well, I have to be honest with you, I had to dive into the concept myself, so I will share my findings with you. And we will talk a little bit first about cross-border payments. What is it? Why is it there? What are already firms that are doing business in cross-border payments? Then we're going to talk about the basic concept of Stellar. We're going to talk about the blockchain-related aspects of Stellar. And we're going to talk a little bit about the competition. Okay, so let's start with cross-border payments. Very simple, basic scheme. You want to buy a product from a foreign country. We trade in euros, they have a different currency. In order to get the product, you have to change your currency into a foreign currency. And then when that has been successfully done, you will probably get the product. This is something that has been facilitated, that is being facilitated right now by a large number of companies. For instance, Adyen or Wirecard or Stripe, PayPal, all these firms, they offer services to facilitate cross-border payments. So there are many companies to choose from, and that brings you to it makes it hard to make a good choice. And I looked a bit into this, making a choice for one of these companies. Well, you have to look into parameters as what is the transaction cost that they have? Is there a presence of fraud tools? What takes it? How many time does it take to start up with such a company? What kind of security levels they have? They look like each other, but they have differences. So probably each has a different sweet spot in the market. When you look at, oh yeah, this is one of the things that happened. Wirecard, that was there. They are in a bit. They are having a hard time at the moment because some money has been lost. If I got the news right. This is a small picture from a company called Adyen, and their offering is that they say, okay, the complete process of cross-border payments is a very complex process, but take our services, because when you do so, we will cover and we will make it very simple to do these cross-border payments. So they automate or cover or help you with a large part of this chain of cross-border payments. Very cool. But why are we talking about cross-border payments in a blockchain lab? Well, there are already excellent digital payment providers, processors, but they are all, most of them are all based around real-world currencies. So the thing is, what will happen when cryptocurrencies enter the world? What will be the impact of blockchain technology for these cross-border payments? And that is where companies or currencies or blockchain concepts like Ripple and Stellar come into place. So what is the basic concept of Stellar? Well, the basic idea is this. They want to solve the problem of cross-border payments between financial institutions because they are typically slow and costly. And Stellar is a solution to that problem by being a decentralized payment network with its own coin. Initially, they called it Stellar, and now they call it Lumen. But when you look at the idea behind Stellar, you see that their own cryptocurrency isn't the central part of their technology. The central part of the technology is enabling cross-border payment between all kinds of currencies. We're going to talk about that a little later. What does it do? Well, Stellar makes it possible to create, send and trade digital representations of all forms of money. That's a bit of a hard concept. Digital representations of all forms of money. So that could be a dollar or a euro or an Australian dollar, but it could also be Bitcoin or Ethereum, Ethers, I mean. So it is designed so that all world's financial systems can work together in a single network. So it's not only having this concept of digital representation of money, but you should also be able to integrate it within your own applications. It's designed for developers. And then being a payment network, it should also be possible to make very small payments with very low and flat fees. And you should be able to go from one currency to another currency. Oh, so it's quite a lot, but it's aimed at, in my head, it's a kind of network where you can get easily money in and easily money out, and you can transfer it between the money, between the currencies that you have available within your network. Well, let's dive in a little bit deeper in this idea of digital representations of money. So the idea is, suppose you have a traditional euro or a traditional dollar, as in this slide. the idea that you can, the possibilities that you have within Stellar is that you are capable of making a digital twin or a digital version of your traditional dollar. So now this dollar can stay within your country, the US, for instance. Or if you made a digital version of your euro, then this euro can stay in Europe. But there is a one-to-one relationship between the real existing euro and the digital euro. And I can use this one-to-one relationship between the traditional and the digital version of the money to do exchanges with other currencies. And it makes it a very useful system for payments. A little bit about the history about Stellar. And that's interesting because that makes it immediately clear that there is a very close relation with another cryptocurrency, with another blockchain network called Ripple, which does more or less the same as Stellar. But there were two persons, Mr. Larson and Mr. McCaleb, and they founded Ripple in 2012. And the idea was, well, Ripple is a quick and cheap cross-border payment network for financial institutions. They aimed at financial institutions, like banks. But then one of the two left Ripple and started Stellar. And it looks, when I look at the information, then it looks that Stellar does more or less the same as Ripple, but is not only aimed at institutions, but more at individuals. So it's the Ripple versions for all of us, if you want to buy. Let's look a little bit about, the sizes of the two cryptocurrencies. And then you see that Stellar is a bit smaller in size, in market capitalization. I think that, well, when you look at it's about, well, what would it be? I think Ripple is 4.5 times bigger than Stellar. Yeah. Okay, but they're both in the top 15 of crypto currencies, so these are big names. Okay. Let's go into the blockchain technology details of Stellar. Well, I already told you that the cryptocurrency connected to Stellar is called a Lumen. XLM is the abbreviation. And they use a specialized consensus model for creating truth, or for creating consensus within the network, a federated Byzantine agreement model. And the way that they implement it, they call it the Stellar Consensus Protocol. Their aims was of having a consensus protocol that is that doesn't cost too much for its users. It doesn't take too much computing power in order to reach the consensus, and by this lowering the barrier of entrance when you use Stellar. The reasons why they had these requirements for creating the Stellar Consensus Protocol is that they looked at Bitcoin, which has a very which has not a modest computing requirement when reaching consensus. It costs a lot of computing power in order to create a new block within Bitcoin. And it's also very costly because you have to pay the people that mine a new block in the Bitcoin network. And we'll see how that is done in Stellar. First, Stellar, being a kind of copy of Ripple, used the same protocol that Ripple used in order to reach consensus, and that's the practical Byzantine fault tolerance. But then they created, as I mentioned before in the slide before, that they created the Stellar consensus protocol, and they had this demand of decentralized control, low latency, high security, and flexible trust. Let's dive into that. In the Ripple network, there is a closed number of nodes and network validators that are involved in reaching the consensus in the Ripple network. So that's not an open network. And maybe that's very practical, because you can say, okay, you make sure that the truth is kept in this network, but it makes it also vulnerable for attacks, or maybe you will not trust the network when it works like this. The Stellar network is an open system, so anyone can become a node or a validator. And then there is these words that you have to understand when you look at Stellar. There is a group of trustees that you can choose to trust. You call that a quorum slice. And they also use the word quorum in order to indicate consensus. When you look at Wikipedia, what quorum really means, that's the minimum number of members necessary to conduct the business of that group. So that's a well-chosen word in this network. It stands for consensus. And there's a big difference with Bitcoin, because in the Stellar network there are no block rewards, and this could be a good thing or a bad thing. But people on the outside tend to look at it as maybe as a bad thing, because there's now no incentive to be part of the truth-keeping mechanism of the network. So why are there so many people involved in Bitcoin to mine these blocks? That was very simple, because for every block that you mine, you get paid. And when one Bitcoin grows in money, then it can be very interesting to mine these blocks because of the money. So in Stellar, that's not the case. And there is also the problem that when the number of nodes is relatively small in the Stellar network, the Stellar network might be vulnerable for malicious takeovers. So when you form a group, a quorum slice that is so large that it is almost the total number of nodes in that network, then you could take over the network. They have made some kind of fallback mechanism in Stellar, and that they can temporarily freeze the network when such an attack takes place. Having these freeze mechanisms in a network makes the network a little bit suspicious, because then you need a group, or you need some signaling that you know when the network is under attack. But okay, maybe it's a good mechanism, a practical mechanism to defend the network. Okay, the last blockchain details about Stellar. Stellar also has a smart contract mechanism, smart contract platform as they call it. And you can do some very simple, you can add some small, simple smart contracts to the Stellar network. For instance, that you, okay, do this payment, make this payment when some constraints are met in time or because some thresholds are reached, and then do the payment. These smart contracts are limited. There is no, the whole mechanism where you make these smart contracts is not so extended as, for instance, in Ethereum. There is no Turing completeness, so you cannot do very advanced computing while executing these smart contracts. It's a rather simple mechanism. How powerful it exactly is, I did not look into that. Okay, competition for Stellar. Well, of course, competition from Stellar comes from Ripple as being a mechanism that is more or less the same. And maybe also from other blockchain payment initiatives. And it is also very interesting to see what the existing digital payment processors will do, because they will also have their own ideas on how these cross-border payments should be organized, of course. And they also want to fit in blockchain currencies within their solutions. Last thing, but I skipped that one, is that central banks could be one of the competition for Stellars, but then it will be groups of global banks. For instance, the banks in the Euro region, but they tend to be on their own domain and not looking at on a global scale. Okay, so to sum it up, go back to the beginning. Okay, we talked about Stellar as being an example of a blockchain technology concept that is aimed at facilitating cross-border payments. The basic concept of Stellar is that you have a network, a blockchain network that allows you to do cross-border payments by making digital versions of all kinds of money. And we saw that the Stellar way of maintaining truth or reaching consensus is realized with their own consensus protocol, the Stellar Consensus Protocol, which is not as computing intensive as the Bitcoin Consensus Protocol. And we see that Stellar has some competitions from Ripple, for instance, and from the traditional already existing digital payment processors. So that was it from my side. Thank you.
Okay, well, I heard the word consensus at least 10 times in this last presentation. So it must be very, very important. Everybody who has put some hours into blockchain knows that consensus is one of the root ideas behind blockchain. And that's why we thought it would be a very nice topic for this meetup. We've put together a few video fragments from YouTube with one of the best speakers I know on blockchain, which is called Anton Antonopoulos. He's got a very extensive series about all kinds of topics about blockchain. He is somewhat of a Bitcoin maximalist, but he also talks about different coins. But you saw the dominance of Bitcoin is 63% at the moment. So that's his main topic. He's gonna first talk about some philosophical backgrounds of consensus and its protocol, and then we're gonna have a small animation to dive a little bit deeper, and then we'll go into a discussion about that.
People find it very difficult to accept the idea that a system can exist with rules and without rulers, a system without authority, a system in which it doesn't matter who is most popular or what opinions they have, because they are unable to change the rules. And I think that was demonstrated resolutely just a couple of weeks ago, culminating, of course, 2 days ago, when the rules were not changed. Again, the rules were not changed. And this time, there was a very large group of people who had a different opinion about the rules. Their opinion was not right. Their opinion was not wrong. Their opinion was opinion. And in Bitcoin, opinions are not judged based on who holds them. What matters is whether they can reach consensus with the overwhelming majority of participants in the system. And if they cannot reach consensus with the overwhelming majority of the people in the system, it doesn't matter how much money they have, how much authority they have, how much popularity they have. And that's how it should be. Regulations are the way we used to run governance in systems where there are rulers, because regulations are created by regulators. Those are rules with rulers. Good news is they can't change the rules of Bitcoin because they do not have consensus. There will be regulations, but there will be regulations only of the systems surrounding open blockchains, not of open blockchains themselves, because open blockchains themselves already are regulated by mathematics, by overwhelming consensus, by network-based rules. These are not systems without regulations. These are systems with very predictable, deterministic, clear, transparent regulations based on mathematics. Regulations not subject to political power, not subject to compromise, discussion, change. And that is why this system is special. It is special precisely because it cannot be changed or subject to political will. Now, a lot of people don't like that. They don't like the existence of a system that is fundamentally supranational and outside of the traditional controls of political power. They don't have to use it. I will. And the system will not change to subject itself to the whim of those who do not like the idea of a system that is outside of traditional governance and regulatory structures. The whole point of the system is that it is outside. The whole point of the system is that it will not be subject to traditional regulations. You can regulate your country out of Bitcoin, but you cannot regulate Bitcoin out of your country. And many countries will regulate themselves out of Bitcoin and out of Ethereum and out of all of the other open blockchains. And they will end up getting the benefit of the closed blockchains, the controlled blockchains, the regulated governments, safe blockchains. I don't want safe. I want free. I want innovative. I want global, transnational, neutral, censorship-resistant. And I will continue to use the system that expresses those principles, and through my choice, I will participate in the consensus rules without rulers.
Blockchain, the hype word of 2018. But do you know how a decentralized peer-to-peer system with no authoritative figure makes decisions? The answer lies in consensus mechanisms. There are various consensus mechanisms, but they all serve the same purpose: to ensure records are true and honest. The difference is the way the consensus is reached. Here, we will explore 3 types of consensus mechanisms. First, let's take a look at proof of work. In a proof of work system, transaction data is stored in blocks, validated by having people solve a complicated math problem attached to it. This is typically done by powerful computers and is known as mining. A reward in the form of a cryptocurrency is issued to the first miner who cracks the problem. Lost? Well, let's break it down. Imagine a group of treasure hunters trying to open a chest with a complicated lock attached to it. Figuring out the correct combination is tedious, but the first person to do so gets rewarded. Simply put, proof of work is a race to figure out the right combination on a treasure chest. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum use a proof of work mechanism. Next, we have proof of stake. Here, the creator of a new block, also known as a validator, is randomly chosen based on how much stake they commit to the network. Meaning to say, the higher the stake placed, the higher the chance to be selected as a validator. Let's apply this to the treasure chest scenario. Picture a group of treasure hunters vying for a chest. The chest is rewarded based on a lottery system. To participate, each hunter has to buy lottery tickets. The more each hunter buys, the higher the chance of winning. Blockchain protocols like Cardano's Ouroboros and EOS adopt the proof of stake consensus. Lastly, proof of authority. A modified form of proof of stake, here only approved parties selected based on their reputation can become validators. Let's revisit the treasure chest scenario. The group of treasure hunters form a union and pool their treasures. Based on their level of trustworthiness, a select few are appointed by the group to ensure the validity of the chest's content. IBM's Hyperledger Fabric and Ethereum's Coven testnet are some examples of blockchain systems that use proof of authority. Whilst traditional blockchain companies exist on a single consensus mechanism, some innovative ones are adopting multiple consensus protocols. Take OPED Foundation, for example, who is building a unique blockchain to store data collected on its Tuition Companion chatbot app by applying both proof of authority and proof of work protocols. Data, such as students' academic, extracurricular, and personality profiling records, are stored on the blockchain and potentially validated via a proof of authority framework powered by Hyperledger Fabric. Validators in this instance are reputable educational institutions or even national registrars and respective ministries of education. This helps ensure that all student data is trustworthy. But who will work for free? Proof of work consensus thus comes into play to reward validators who have performed work. With Hyperledger Fabric, each student record is secured with a private hash key owned by the student. The data can only be accessed when the students provide the unique key. This means student privacy is preserved and controlled by the student themselves. For example, when students apply to university via OPED's platform, they will provide the unique key of their records to the university. With that, the university will be able to access their latest academic records. Students will also be able to see if their records have been unlocked or at least considered for application. This boosts efficiency and transparency compared to traditional methods. By marrying the proof of work and proof of authority models, OPED Foundation's blockchain solution ensures privacy on students' data while incentivizing both educational institutions and students when they contribute to OPED's platform. With blockchains gaining popularity, it's only a matter of time before we see even more unique hybrid systems created.
Well, as you can see, consensus is very, very important for blockchain and blockchain applications on different levels. So consensus is what you need when you want to guarantee the truth and the validity of the data stored in the blockchain. Consensus is what you need when you want to change the rules within the blockchain community. And at first glance, you would think that would be a democratic solution where when more people vote something to be the truth, then it would be the truth. But even in a democracy like the Netherlands, you have a central authority, the government, which enforces democracy. And now we're in blockchain land, and there is no central authority. Nobody is the ruler. So how do you set the rules? And how do you guarantee that everybody will follow these rules and that we have the same thoughts about the truth? So that is consensus. And now you've heard a little bit about what consensus does in different phases of the blockchain. Maybe you would like to discuss what's going on. Do you have any questions about what consensus is and how does it work? It's very quiet. Well, I don't know if you have already looked into things like mining and consensus mechanisms. Everybody, you've seen it on the screen, knows about a proof of work and how this consensus mechanism works. A proof of stake being the answer to all the energy problems proof of work has. But also there are many types of consensus, proof of authority, a proof of burn, delegated proof of work, etc. The main thing is that you understand how that works within different types of blockchains. Ethereum and Bitcoin have one type of consensus, but and Ethereum is even switching to another type of that. But EOS and Cardano and IOTA, for instance, all have different types of consensus mechanisms. Yeah. Yeah. In IOTA, let me start by Bitcoin first. Then we'll compare that to IOTA. So Bitcoin, you do a transaction, and the transaction is mined by a lot of miners, which do that proof of work, that puzzle, so to speak. And when somebody solves the puzzle, finds the combination to the treasure chest, which was in the animation film, then all the others can check if that nonce and fits to the hash, and then consensus has to be reached, because there might be another miner that in the same time finds the nonce, and then the consensus is that the longest chain wins, right? So that's the way they solve it in Bitcoin. In IOTA, there are no miners. In IOTA, the conflict you normally have between users and miners, right? There is a conflict of interest in Bitcoin. We saw that a few years ago. The speed, the transaction speed for confirmation in Bitcoin is about 7 transactions per second, which is very low, right? It's so low that it is not really a feasible project. The world capacity being 7 transactions per second. So the miners got a new mechanism which they proposed, and the mechanism was we're going to increase the block size by I believe it was 8 times. So in the same time we can do 8 times as many transactions. So that would be 56 transactions. It's not much, but hey, it's 8 times better as what they have now. All the miners said, we're not going to do it. The miners said, we're not going to do 8 times as much work for the same money. So the miners amongst themselves rejected the proposal, right? And because of that, the largest majority of them rejected the proposal, it wasn't put into the system. So they had consensus to not use the new mechanism. And that was a conflict of interest, because the users would like to go faster, and the miners said, well, we're not going to do that for the same money. Now, IOTA has solved that. IOTA says the user is the miner. We don't have separate miners. Everybody who does an IOTA transaction on his phone, right? You send a transaction, then you have to mine 2 other transactions, right? And you confirm these other transactions, and there are certain rules, right? Blockchains and having an internet of value is built upon the fact that you cannot have a double spend. Yeah, if I give some money to you, Alex, then I cannot spend that same coin somewhere else. Otherwise, the value would be 0. So every phone that confirms these two other transactions has to go through a number of rules, checks if the money isn't spent before, if there are any conflicts in the tangle, because they don't have a chain, it's called a tangle. And so there is no consensus in the rules. The rules of the miner are set by first the IOTA Foundation, right? And it is implemented in the software, in the wallets of IOTA. And by using IOTA, you confirm that you are are obliged to work with those rules. So consensus works a little bit different in IOTA than in first and second generation blockchains. IOTA is third generation. Yes, that's I think one of the biggest issues when you start a blockchain. It has to be safe. Otherwise, there is no in between. It cannot be a little bit safe. It's binary. It is safe or not. So when there is even only 1 or 2 transactions in the whole ecosystem that are with errors, right? So that you could have a double spend, or it is not the truth. There are conflicts in the tangle. Then your whole system is being rejected by its users. Well, it's worth nothing, right? So it's just as safe. Yeah, I would even say that IOTA is safer than Bitcoin, right? But that is because IOTA is quantum computing resistant. So as you know it, there are new generations of computers coming, and we're not there yet, right? It will take us at least a decade. But these quantum computers will be able to calculate hashes 180 million times faster. So a miner, which would have a supercomputer, a quantum computer, would mine a lot faster. Yeah, he could calculate the hash in an instant. And that would be a safety hazard, because when you put encrypted data on a blockchain, you're going to assume that nobody else can decrypt it, right? Now, IOTA has a special system which will also become faster with quantum computers, but only 80 times faster. So instead of 260 billion years to solve the puzzle, you will only have to use 30 billion years, right? I'll take my chances on that. Any other questions? Not really? Okay, I'll just end the stream, and we can discuss about all kinds of other topics when I'm done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to thank Jeroen for his talk about Stellar. Yes. And you see here the date of our next meetup, which will be in September, because this one is the last before the summer holidays. So and maybe we shouldn't have done this one also, because I see not too many people attending. Even with coronavirus, people are on holidays, so it seems. So no meetup in August. We'll have our meetup in September on the 17th, and I hope to see you there. I'll end the stream, and then we'll continue in Jitsi to have our informal part of our discussions.